Western nations have imposed successively tougher sanctions on Russia since its full-scale invasion of Ukraine last year. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky warned Sunday that Russia is circumventing these measures.
Unfortunately, the terrorist state manages to obtain the technologies of the world through a network of suppliers, manages to bypass international sanctions.
Russia is learning to adapt to the sanctions, says Tom Keating, author of the RUSI report.
In particular, sourcing the kind of electronic components they need to support their military. That's the first thing. The second thing is obviously they've had to look for new markets for their hydrocarbons, their oil exports. That's a key revenue generator for the country.
Russia says its economy shrank by 2.1% in 2022, less than many expected. Meanwhile, imports of Russian crude oil by China and India hit an all-time high in May. That's partly because the sanctions apply only to Western governments and companies trading with Russia.
And therefore, if you're a bank in India, you can perfectly well have a financial connection with a Russian bank.
Nevertheless, most global trade is still conducted in US dollars. So how has Russia circumvented attempts to strangle its economy? Keating says the Kremlin is increasingly looking to Iran as a model of how to evade sanctions. Tehran has been subject to various Western sanctions over its nuclear and missile programs and its support for terrorist groups, which Iran denies.
Iran, as a hydrocarbon economy trying to export oil, has learned a lot of tricks over the recent years that we do see Russia start to employ. So, for example, shadow fleets of tankers, so these kind of switching oil between tankers in the middle of the night with location devices switched off, but also using front companies in places like Turkey or the UAE to try and hide the origin of trade.
The two countries have also begun connecting their financial systems to facilitate transactions outside the global SWIFT payment system. Last month, Russia's second largest bank, VTB, opened an office in Tehran. How can Ukraine's allies prevent Russia evading the sanctions? The private sector is the front line of compliance, notes Keating.
The private sector has had to scramble to get itself in a position to ensure that it knows who its customers are, it knows who it's exporting things to, it knows what's allowed and what's not allowed. And so the result is that there are huge gaps in the system.
The report urges the West to educate the private sector on detecting illegal trades. It warns that Moscow will increasingly seek to use Iran's playbook as it tries to circumvent sanctions. Henry Richwell for VOA News, London.